Wow.
I gotta fix
Oh, look at this guy.
the morning dew.
Yeah, exactly. He does this every Monday morning just to mess with me. That's the whole point about this.
It's I take it from my son. His hair is so important now. It's just hilarious. I love it. I don't have my comb, but
Oh
I'm in
my
the swimming
God.
pool.
Oh my God.
Wake up and deliver your hairstyles. John, take it away.
I wake up ready.
I wake up ready. Oh man,
Oh yeah.
I gotta fix this stuff. Anyways, before I get cut off too much on my hair, wake up and deliver episode 36. We're rocking and we're rolling, ready for another fun day. As always, we have John and myself to bring you the latest, greatest to our sleepless logisticians. As always, we got some morning coffee to go with it.
What do you got today there?
Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm always ready. Let's go.
Boom. Surround yourself with people who are thoughtful in ways you are not, because they see what you can't.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan. This like encompasses everything I would tell anyone about hiring. It's like if you want to get different results, you got to hire people that think differently than you, right? Or people that have different experiences. I think it's the most crazy thing ever. Organizations that sit there and complain that they don't get the results they want, and every time they have the chance to hire, they just hire exactly like they already have, and then they expect these wild different answers. So I'm a full supporter of this morning's inspirational wisdom.
Love it. I love it. I work hard scathing the internet to find ways to motivate you on these Monday mornings.
Oh, I appreciate it. Got to keep me going.
This week's news, we're going to keep it nice and fun. One thing I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you saw it, I don't know how to pronounce it, Xiaomi?
Xiaomi.
That sounds a lot better. Xiaomi sounds a lot better.
I know, I'm pretty sure.
Xiaomi factory in China producing cell phones completely in the black, meaning no people, nobody in the factory, all the lights are turned off, a cell phone a second, and the only people that are in the factory are the people that do maintenance whenever it's needed. And then they have an AI that kind of rotates through and looks for issues. And I know you won't be able to hear the sound, but this is kind of their intro video of their smart factory. When we talk about manufacturing coming back to North America, we still think about people in factories working these jobs.
No. The politicians pretend it's people in on the line and stuff like that. Any business knows that if they're going to build a factory in North America, this is 100% how it's going to be built.
Can we compete with this? Like this is already being done. A cell phone a second.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Is like, and those are the two biggest issues with like a lot of this, like either reshoring or like rebuilding any kind of like real local supply chain. Is that like it's not just about the like technical capability, like, oh, we have enough smarts or understanding about how to build a system like this. It's like just years of catch up in terms of knowing all of the little things that they kind of, figured out, worked out, improved along the way. And that's like going to be, and people say that's the biggest like issue when it comes to being cost competitive, is not like the broad line thinking, like, you know what I mean? But it's being able to do it at a certain scale. And then also continuing to be able to compete so you can get that volume, right? I mean, we talk about density, we talk about volume all the time. Manufacturing is the exact same thing, right? Like these guys are making all the phones, they make some of their phones. There's tons of contract manufacturing when it comes to phones, panels. I mean, Samsung, one of the biggest jokes when we were at Future Shop and Best Buy was that like what was the brand? Insignia. Like if you ripped off the plastic panels, it was a dumb Samsung panel underneath, right? Because they made it. So like there's only so many people who are making these things, and there's only so many people who are going to build them millions at a time, right?
Well, it's also that vertical integration. This is why one of the things that recently people were talking about, it's like, what's his name? Larry from Oracle being the richest man in the world right now, because he's more vertically integrated. But there's a lot of powerhouses that are coming up behind it. Like you can't dismiss Musk and his manufacturing genius that he has done so far, and his ability to create a North American manufacturer, because he's going to be one of the ones that is further ahead with Starlink and all these things. He's not a far step away from being further integrated. What I was going to go with that is Google is another one, or Alphabet you're not talking about, because they're so vertically integrated. The amount of users they have per one of their services, there's like 6 or 7 services they have, over 1 billion users.
Yeah.
That kind of information is just
going
to power way ahead. And they make their own chips. They don't use the NVIDIA ones and all that. So you got to think about all these integrations and how to kind of vertically set up. I think that's going to be the key, is how do you create your specific niche in your logistics and have it vertically connected to your partner. You can't just be providing a truck from point A to point B and expect to make millions.
Oh yeah, exactly. And funny enough, did you see I don't know, I think it was late last week, Britton Ladd posted about Musk, and like he called it the Musk ecosystem or something like that.
Yeah.
It's very true. Like, you know what I mean? You start getting into some of these things. It's like you have cars, you have the robots, you have a Starlink, and all of a sudden now he's starting like a cell phone company, essentially. Like, you know what I mean? With Starlink. Same kind of thing. Like this, to your point, this like end-to-end ecosystem of stuff. And I think if you like zoom out, you know, and you kind of look at almost every industry, but pretty much everyone that, you know, you and I touch in this logistics space, they're starting to do that, right? Like these mega corporations, like, I mean, look at Walmart, right? Walmart did their own sourcing. Now they're helping people source. Now they have fulfillment by Walmart. Oh, they're going to deliver it for you. They got Walmart Plus example, you know, and they're just continuing to add on. And that's really what I think a lot of people are all doing strategically. Because I was saying to you, obviously, before we started, I had asked you about this. So this is an interesting segue about Trimble. And Trimble's starting a freight marketplace. And they were, you know, they released this news a couple of weeks ago, and they were like, oh, and P&G, who's obviously a huge client, is like one of the first shippers on there. Now, how much P&G uses it or would use it is one thing. But, you know, I don't think anyone sitting sort of in a Trimble boardroom is like, guys, like, you know what, we need our next big thing. What's something that's a real pain point that nobody can do that we can do? And some guy just being like, oh, freight marketplace. Like these things are already everywhere, right? I mean, you got the startup guys doing it. You got Uber doing it. You got all kinds of people doing it. So to your point, the only real benefit is to continue to just try to find ways to layer into your own ecosystem, or to sort of provide opportunity into your own ecosystem.
Even to that point, it's these freight marketplaces, you got to be open source to a lot of them. And that's the challenge with drivers, is if you're not in the TQL ecosystem, if you're not in the CH Robinson ecosystem, you have to have all these other layers that you got to put onto yourself. So you're going to have different apps, different marketplaces, and it becomes a nuisance. And eventually that's where they go back to what they're used to, either the DAT load board, you know, the load link in Canada, et cetera, even though same company. And then you're kind of just in the same ecosystem that you've always been, and you're like, I'm not going anywhere kind of else, because there's nothing that unifies it across the board for a driver. And everybody has this perspective of the procurement person driving the freight. But in the end, if you don't have those drivers moving it from point A to point B, nothing happens. Right?
Oh, for sure. Because like I can tell you that, and you know, I think a lot of people joke at like the tension between like sales and operations, but like I can tell you, like working with buyers and things like that, you're if you ask them like, hey, what are your warehouse procedures? They're like, what do you mean? Here's the address. It's like, no, like what's everything that they expect me to do? I know where it is. What do I have to do? And they're like, I don't know. Like you show up, I guess. It's like, no, absolutely not. That's not how your warehouse operates, right? Very often there's huge disconnects there between like the buyers too and operations. And I would agree with you that I don't think that anyone thinking that like, hey, we can put up a freight marketplace and like the buyers or the strategic sourcing team or whoever it could be is going to be the one like setting all this up. Like that's a mess. What I do think is interesting though, I got an invite for Comet the other day and I tried to set it up, but unfortunately they only support Windows and Mac. But yeah, I know, it's very sad. But I think that that's going to be where the real difference comes in when you're talking about owner operators and stuff like that. That's really the nut that needs to be cracked, so to speak, is basically like appreciate the fact that the vast majority of fleets across the US are under 10 trucks, which means that you have an owner operator with a handful of people working with them or whatever, you know what I mean? And these agentic tools that essentially can just replicate the human input, that's going to be where these things eventually will finally like break that barrier and connect to these people that, they know what they know in terms of like the platforms and the systems they used to use. But now they'll just go forward saying like, hey, find me any loads from anyone that's posting that you can essentially manually quote on. You know what I mean?
And it kind of leads us into, I guess, the topic that we were talking about beforehand is the procurement process, and Trimble being a big transporting, like they own transporting, that's a big usage for procurement. Mm-hmm. But even that procurement process, we talk about these 1 to 10 truck companies, they won't necessarily flourish in these ecosystems that use these procurement software. And that's why I think they made these freight marketplaces, because the idea is, can the spot market beat the contractual market in the long term? Can me fighting the spot market win? And there's a few companies out there that think the spot will always eventually win because you're always finding the best price. The challenge I have with that is it's a race to the bottom. And I love using that term because you're always chasing to the lowest dollar. And when you drive a partner, and this is what your partner carriers are, if you're chasing them to the lowest denominator every time, they can't grow. And if they can't grow, they can't buy more trucks. And if they can't buy more trucks, they can't give you better capacity and better coverage. So it's a very hard system. And that's why I have a challenging time with these AI negotiations as well, because it's always like, hey, let's find the lowest price and I'll get you the lowest price. I don't always buy the lowest price truck. I rather buy a truck that I know I can sleep at night. And I always tell that to my guys. Like, I'd rather pay you $200 more, $300 more, because I can go to sleep and I won't be up all night. And that makes a world of a difference, right? An AI agent or a system that finds the lowest price takes that human factor out of that procurement process. Even the procurement process, as we've talked about, is a nightmare at times, because really? you can't do anything about it. There's no questions. You can't get involved. It's like, can I connect this? Can I do this? It's just the lane and yellow light, green light, blue light. You're good to go.
Yeah, well, I shared some stuff with you from my experience in the past, but I mean, I'll come back to your point about like the spot market. I'll share my opinion, and like I'll see if anyone like jumps down my throat. But like my personal opinion is that if you ever think that the spot market will beat contract rates, you're just lying to yourself, because the reality is that, to your point, it is a race to the bottom, and you may get the best price, but it's so wildly contextual, right? That and just relative, that it'll never provide the real long-term stability that most businesses really need when they're looking to grow. Because at the end of the day, and this is touching back, I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever, we were talking about dynamic pricing. And it's kind of like my same point is that, like, that same lane for that same shipper to that same carrier could be $500 on a particular Wednesday. And then all of a sudden that shipper or that lane gets more popular because a new warehouse opens, some investment happened in that city, some other carrier went bankrupt that did a lot of those lanes, whatever it could be. And now all of a sudden that same shipper with that same load to that same carrier on that same type of day, i.e. Wednesday, now it's $1,500.
Yep.
And that's because of the fact that the spot market is completely contextual and just relative to whatever the particular set of circumstances are. That's like, I've never, and I, big budgets and big transportation spend. I actually, at one part of my career, could not even get my company to consider spot rates. They wouldn't even engage in it, let alone think it was a good strategy.
I'll give you a great example of this. So early in the year, we won a good sizable contract on paper. It said it had X amount of loads for X amount of regions. And we're like, oh, this is fantastic because we have, we can reload our guys back, and everything was fantastic. It was supposed to be like, call it 30 loads a week. In the end, the truth came out that because of tariffs and everything else, it became almost negligible. and we priced it based off of the volume. We priced it based off of the inbound market and everything else. And the inbound market was very strong at the time. We didn't have as much volatility coming inbound, right? So we didn't see any of those tenders for a while. And all of a sudden, the market inbound flipped, where the price on a specific lane went from being, call it 5,000, dropped to like $3,500 coming back in. And we had it priced that the truck coming down was going to get X amount, and we had the $1,500, and then we can bring it back up, and it'll be a profitable run for everybody involved. Now they started giving us the freight. The customer that hadn't for 6 months, all of a sudden started giving us the freight. And we're going, hold on, I don't know if this is manageable. They're like, why? You committed this. We're like, yeah, but you weren't around for 6 months, and the market has now shifted, and it shifted in a very drastic way. And they're like, well, it's we couldn't help it, and it's not really our problem. I'm like, well, had you provided us freight the whole time, we could have managed it a little bit differently. But all of a sudden, to throw it at the tail end of it, at the end of the contract, makes it a hard conversation, right? And especially on the outbound piece. So yeah, it does matter, because all of a sudden, the external forces can force rates to do something different. It's not about capacity. You can't foresee some of this, and it can't be because produce obviously affects it. Cyclical events do happen, but some events are outside of control and being able to foresee it. That you just are caught in that kind of space where the spot market completely now flipped it, right?
Oh, like 100%. And I mean, even getting into those situations, I mean, are like RFPs, RFQs, whatever, like those can get so nasty just because of the fact that like the data that gets pulled for that is usually not always the cleanest. It's not always the most understood. Like all of a sudden it could be like, hey, well, year over year, I'm going to do the same as I did last year. And then I'm baking in my growth, right? So now it's this many more loads. But then you go to find out that like they didn't really remember or realize that like, oh, well, we only kind of actually did that many lanes because this other support facility went down for 4 months, and it all ended up showing up in this one, and it would never have shown up if it wasn't for that. Plus we built in, 10% growth, and we're only growing at 2%. All of these things go super wild. So it's definitely not easy. And I do agree with you that I think that that's kind of like challenging when someone has potentially like a contract, if they want to call it that, if they haven't been using it. But I mean, it's kind of like trying to secure rates just in case you need it at some point without like living up to the sort of cyclic consistency that usually is the assumption of pretty much whether it's, sort of yourself or like any other carrier or whatever, that usually assumes that, right? Like, I mean, you and I were even talking about something not that long ago, and, I was explaining to my logic, and I did the same thing because that's what I used to do. Oh, annual volume, monthly, weekly. Like, you know what I mean? You kind of start to step it down.
Well, this doesn't even apply necessarily to just transportation back and forth. I had and the same thing applies to warehouses. I've been setting up a warehouse for a customer, and it was supposed to start July 1st, and it became August 1st, and then it became September 1st, and that was pushed off to January 1st. And the person I secured the warehouse with, they're like, hey man, are we going? Are you paying? Like, if I got other people coming, do you want it? Don't you want it? And it's kind of like, yeah, but the product's not ready. Like, it's the ever shifting sands of time are changing our ability to serve. And it applies to the same context, not just about the transportation. It's that motion of, yes, I want your space. I just don't know when, and I'm not going to pay for it. And a lot of the warehouse people I've talked to say it's a very common issue they have, and that's why they, yeah. And it's just
I'm shocked this person is holding space for you with no money.
He's a dear friend, and I don't want to make any shout outs because I don't want people using up my space, but he's a dear friend, and if he's watching, you're
someone
a good
out there's got some available space at the moment.
Let me just say he's quite regal. He's quite regal.
we should help him out though, because if it's only January, we should find out who needs some stuff for November and December. We can get him going.
I have helped him out, and it's funny because another friend with a warehouse, and he kind of came to me with a similar problem, and he had like 20,000 square feet, and he had it available, and people were coming up to him, they're like, "Oh, what's the price?" And he'd be like, just example, like $3 a square foot. I'll be
Oh,
like, oh, that's awesome. I'll take it. I'll take it. They're like, that's for the 20,000 square feet. They're like, no. I only want 1,000.
100. We
Yeah,
want
1,000.
100.
And he's like, okay, then it's like triple the price. They're like, well, why? I'm like, because I have the rest of the empty warehouse. Like, I can't just piecemeal it and expect you to pay the price for the full warehouse, right? And that's a bit of the challenge too. It's like finding out your full truckload rate for 30 skids comes out to be $25 a skid. Oh, I'm just gonna load 2 skids then,
Well,
and pay that LTL price.
well, exactly. And that's funny though, because like I've talked about this before, but I brought it up recently, like with like a warehouse client, and they were talking about like essentially the same kind of thing, like the pallet rates they charge, right, for storage and stuff like that. And you have different rates based on different facilities and velocity and what clients need. So like, there's a lot of like variability in these kinds of things, but like at the end of the day, the most basic thing, and most I'm always shocked like when I have these conversations with like the warehouse owners or like the whoever's running the 3PL, and I'm like, okay, so how many spaces do you have? Okay, perfect. It's like, how much money do you guys essentially need to meet just from your like storage? Like, what do you want to make? Like, they have a number, they have some kind of idea, and then they're like, and then I'm like, okay, cool, so take that and divide that by your pallets, like that roughly, like that's your bare minimum that you should be charging for your pallet positions. And then sometimes like they do that like quick math and they look down and then you just like see it like dawn on them right away where it's like,
Oh shit.
it's like, oh, charging $7 a pallet, it's really not going to work for me. Well, I'm like, no, because even if you're full, it's not good. And what so many people get in the trap of doing is when they're empty, right? They try to discount to just get some revenue going. They're like, hey, I'm empty, whatever, I get it. So let's just say that pallet position is worth $20. Oh, I have no one here. I might as well do 7. Oh, the next guy comes in, maybe I'll try 10, or I'll try and get a little bit more. But the reality is, if all of your pallet positions together should have averaged out to, let's just say, $15 a pallet position, or 17, whatever. For every guy that like you sell for 8, the next guy you got to sell for like 24 just to break even or something like that. You know what I mean? And no one realizes that, because everyone will just tell you like, well, you can't charge 25, 30. That's out of range. And I'm like, yeah, it is. So you got a problem, because it means that you're essentially 100% guaranteed to lose money, or at least make less money than what you wanted to with this asset and this opportunity, which now means from your business perspective, are you going to get it from pick and pack? Are you getting it from like shipping markups? Are you getting it from special projects at a much higher rate, whatever? But point being is that it's got to come from somewhere, because you're, whether you own the building directly or you're leasing from some big landlord, you got bills. You got to get those paid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, even in Toronto, which had like a 99% capacity rate of warehousing, it's still very difficult to find warehouse space that you can get for a good buck, because a lot of people are expecting too high because they want a lot of space. Or if anybody is at the lower account, you're not going to last long because they're trying to fill the last little bit of space like you're talking about. But once they find the next customer at the higher rate, they're going to kick you right out.
Yeah,
and
usually, or you're pigeonholed, and you're like, okay, great, you can load your 50 pallets, but that's the end of your business with them. Like if you need 100 or 200, you know what I mean?
Exactly, right. So it's a challenging market, especially in warehousing, and it's the same as the trucking aspect of it. Even like we were talking about the final mile retail position that you and I were talking about earlier in the week. Just charging a flat rate. Sometimes when you get to the destination, it becomes a bit of a challenge, because it fluctuates, depends on the activity, how long you're taking to do the unload, how to do this, and you might be like, oh, okay, I can do it for $5, call it. To make a retail store delivery. But, on paper, it takes 15 minutes. The actual reality, it takes an hour. And then you kick that in for $5, and all of a sudden it's like, no, that's going to cost me 20 because you expected 15.
Exactly. When I was in the food industry and we did that, like I did it, like I do, I'm a big proponent of time and activity modeling and stuff like that.
Really? Get out.
Yeah, you know that. Everyone else may not know that, but now they do. Big fan of time and activity, because I think at minimum you always need to know it, and then you can do whatever else you want. But time and activity is really your best way to get to your real costs and your real commitments. But that's exactly what we would do, right? And it's funny because it's kind of like the law, which I think is kind of hilarious in the sense of like, what's the main test for a lot of these like legal issues is essentially comes down to what would a reasonable person either assume or what would a reasonable person do. It's the same thing in like logistics, right? Whether you're making a delivery, and this actually applies to everybody, whether you're making a parcel last mile delivery, whether you're doing B2B like direct to store deliveries, or you're doing warehouse deliveries, whether you're in the warehouse working, everything comes down to this concept of like your standard order, because that's really what you want to understand. Even if you have variability, and even if you can charge for variability, your real success comes into really understanding and profiling your activity by like whether you think of it as a customer or just like an activity set or whatever. But I used to create like profiles for the different activities. Like it would be this type of retailer at this volume, this type of whatever. And then a run in this city versus that city and whatever. And that was exactly that. I remember going into some of these major retailers and having to have the conversation being like, I got a list of your stores that like we need to have a chat about, because these guys are like, either you're going to pay a lot more or we're going to just have to make something change here, because like they're blowing out the assumptions that allowed us to give you the pricing or the service levels that we committed to.
It's the cost of doing business.
Come
on, John. I can just accept it. If you want this contract, just accept it.
No, that's where people don't do it, is because they don't know how to bring it up. I do remember I had one of the Costco VPs one time that kind of was like, when I was sitting there, and she was like, well, you think you could order better than we can? And that was such an interesting answer I had to give her.
Well, like, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like saying like yes while not being rude at the same time.
Well, it's funny because I mean, a couple of years ago, I was working on a project, and I was the skill-based, not skill, but task-based time management. I was trying to figure out how to make it the cost work. So I literally in my office, not here, but at the office at the time, I envisioned myself building a skid, how quickly it would take me to build a skid, how many rows it would take, and then I'd be like, okay, how long did that take? And I would time it. And I'd be like, okay, if I'm doing this quickly and I'm not tired, how would I do it at the end of the day? Would I be 60%? And I kind of came up with that number at the end. And I'm like, this is how long it took to build these skids at the warehouse. But I had to physically put myself in that position to be able to price that correctly, because there's no other way of doing it, because it was a new activity for us at the time. And we had to put ourselves in that perspective and run it. And then it takes that twinning to be able to do that sometimes. And you have to run that activity. Like sometimes, I remember many, many years ago when Target was still in Canada, when we were doing the pricing out for the Target stores, one of my supervisors, who's in a city planner for forever, he was like, oh man, that store, you got to charge more. I'm like, why? Because it's all one-way turns, and you got to back in blind side, and you got to do all these funky things. And when you go down, you got to go underneath it. It's just, he goes, it's going to take at least 45 minutes to deliver from the street. I'm going, really? And then we went out and looked at it, and we're like, holy crap, it was even difficult in the car, and everything else was a tight blind. And we're like, okay, that makes sense, right? But that experience of knowing these things on that activity, because on paper, because remember we had the engineering drawings for those stores too. It looked easy. It was like the engineer drew nice little lines. He goes, the guy just has to do this, and he delivers.
Yeah, he's driving down the opposite side of the street or something like that. Like,
yeah, they put up a new tree, they put up a new curb, and the drawings are no longer valid, right? And then it became a longer activity. I remember reviewing that like intensely. Like I'm going, that activity changes, and that model for that delivery changed, because it must be a drop, go, pick, go, and you couldn't do that anymore because it took longer. And I remember the customer being like, why are you guys so obscenely more expensive on this one store? Like, because of this activity took a lot longer than you guys were saying.
So funny, man. When I was a kid, for where I used to live, and it's exactly the same kind of thing. They had this big grocery store that just dominated the corner of the block, and it was going into a residential area. It was kind of like not a main road or anything, so like the traffic was really light. And I know it was the same thing where they're like, yeah, you just turn in here, you back in, and it's perfect. But to your point, what I guarantee you no one knew at the time was that there was a massive tree, massive tree on the other side of the road. and they definitely didn't do the. It was fine when there were no trucks in there, but there were 3 doors. The second that someone else was in there, it started to become a problem, and the guys would have to like really jackknife in. This poor tree, man, had so many battle wounds from tractors that just like smacked it and whatever. So the same thing. It probably took quadruple the time to deliver that store than they ever planned.
And that tree won. It's still standing there.
I don't know. Story. I should check though, but I wouldn't be be surprised though if someone finds
in the comments this week. I want to see that picture of that tree, John.
I should go find it and see if it's still up or not. And see the wounds.
On that note, we are at time. John, words of wisdom to close off the week.
Don't race to the bottom and build. There you go.
You heard it here first.
It's like that was a brand new innovative thought right there for everybody.
Never race to the bottom. John supports that idea. On that note, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll be back next week as always. Same channel, same doc, same time, same everything, same people. Yeah. Maybe one day we'll bring in a guest, but I kind of like John.
Jump in and chat with us. See what happens. See how much you love it. You might love it. You get hooked.
Yes, exactly. Goodbye on that note.